Hello and welcome to the Curator of Monocle Radio with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Over the next 60 minutes, we'll be bringing you some of the very best interviews and reports from the past week of coverage on Monocle Radio, with highlights from our studios here in Midori House and from around the world. This week, the Monocle team was on the road, in both Nuuk and Davos. Among our highlights, we hear from the mayor of Nuuk, Avarak Olsen.
Now Trump said that he won't be using force. That gives people time to breathe up, but we still have some things to be concerned about.
Plus, in Davos, we hear from the Prime Minister of Kosovo, Albin Kurti.
International recognition and acknowledgement is increasing, and that has to do with our progress at home, but also with our capacity to defend and secure ourselves.
All that and much more in the next hour, here on The Curator, with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. We start the show in Nuuk where, some members of our team were there reporting from the ground, including Monocle's contributing editor, Andrew Muller. He was there all week speaking to Greenlanders, including the mayor of Nuuk, Avarak Olsen.
It's been a roller coaster ride, to say it mildly. It started with few people actually worried, like most people talked about it but kept on with their daily life. But it's the opposite now. Everybody worries. A lot of people are anxious, have concerns, even children, and especially the elder population. But now Trump said that he won't be using force. I think that gives people time to breathe up. But as I heard him, we still have some things to be concerned about.
But have you, in your job, got concerned to the point where you've had to start having conversations about, should we actually prepare for this? What do we actually do?
The first thing we've done is also making sure that people doesn't feel alone. Make sure that we all have the tools to talk to each other in the right way. We live in a society where we are very much on social medias, but the social media is in English, which is our third language. So we have a great part of the population who doesn't speak or understand English as fluently as I do, for example. So when you see images and maybe not understand the full context of it, you start to imagine very bad things. So that's why we also had to try to give people tools to how to talk about the things that you see. Not many are prepared to things as fake news or AI.
Are you noticing as well among local people here much, actual anger?
Yeah, it is anger. It's a completely new anger towards the American president and the policy he's going. When it was announced last year that J.D. Vance was coming to Nuuk, people started a demonstration in Nuuk, which turned out to be, at the time, the largest demonstration we ever had in Greenland. And that actually turned out to be something that I can guess, that kept J.D. Vance from Nuuk. He didn't come to Nuuk because everybody was turning him down. And we thought that, okay, we already made the statement, that must be enough. But the anger has increased again after Trump.
So I'm guessing Donald Jr. and Charlie Kirk didn't impress anybody when they were here?
Not at all. The opposite.
Is it true they were literally handing out money to people in the street?
They were handing out money on the street, and they even handed out money to very young teenagers and had them saying things pro-America on screen to use in social medias. And that's why we also made guidelines for journalists. As the municipality, it's our job to also protect our kindergartens and our schools. We had reporters, but also influencers, pro-Trump, coming to Nuuk, and they just walked into classrooms and wanted to film young people, children, and talk to them about this. And they did hand out $100 bills on the street. And that made people very angry.
This is probably not something you anticipated having to deal with when you became mayor in 2022. If all this wasn't happening, what kind of things would you rather be working on?
We would be working on more housing, better schools, more jobs outside of Nuuk, all the other regular problems that you try to solve in any other municipality in the world.
But are there problems unique, or challenges, I guess, unique to somewhere like Nuuk?
The infrastructure. We are a very big island. We don't have roads between our towns. I have one village in south of Nuuk. It takes me 30 hours by ship to get there. I have another town in our municipality on East Greenland, and it's so far away I have to go to Iceland before I can reach that town. Our municipality is the largest municipality geographically in the world, and we are in the size of France. So I would say infrastructure is something that we deal with in another level.
But is there any sense at all in which this has been an opportunity? Because obviously enormous global attention very suddenly focused on Greenland.
There's no doubt that we have more attention now, and it's positive attention. The tourism was already growing in Greenland. We have very new and fresh eyes on us now, and the world wants to learn about us and learn from us, hear our opinions, and not just talk about us in a way they think we are. And that's very new to us.
Thank you, Andrew, and more from Nuuk in a bit. And this week we were not only in Nuuk but also in Davos. And we spoke to Albin Kurti, the Prime Minister of Kosovo. He stopped by our studios in Davos to share his vision for the nation and why being there with international partners matters. He spoke to our senior foreign correspondent, Carlota Rebelo.
One of the reasons why I came here this year is House of Kosovo. We are among 25 countries who have their houses in this global international village like no other. And there we both present our culture and identity, but also opportunities for investment. At the center are our diaspora and youth. We have very talented, energetic youth in Kosovo, which is tech-savvy and is helping our tech sector bloom. So exports amount to 50% of our GDP, and over 3/4 of them are services of our tech sector. So we are very optimistic about times ahead, and we want to build new bridges because Kosovo can become hub of this EMENA region, Europe, Middle East, North Africa, where business process outsourcing is turning into a tech ecosystem. Besides that, we have in mind a lot of infrastructural projects, from railways to energy to stadiums to water reservoirs, that will be put into public auction for foreign investors, and looking forward to have further growth and further progress.
Now, you mentioned the average age of the population of your country and how it is predominantly young, but also the country itself is quite a young state as well. And not to just talk about WEF, but more in generally, this bridge building with international partners, this making sure your voice is heard, is still an ongoing process. Tell me a bit more about, how you go about both, I guess, diplomatically, economically, in asserting Kosovo as a player in the world stage.
On February 17th, our independence will turn 18. Liberation in 1999 and then Declaration of Independence in 2008 have had an incredible socioeconomic dividend. GDP per capita in my country is 6 times higher this year than the year 2000, which is the first year after liberation, and 3 times higher than the year 2008 when we declared independence. So freedom paid off, so to speak, for the society and for the economy. And This time around, annual state budget is by 2/3 higher than in 2021 when I became Prime Minister. We never fell below 4% in terms of economic growth, and during my mandate, the average growth was 6%. We did not withhold economic growth for the state. We distributed and redistributed for the society, especially for new mothers, children, students, young entrepreneurs, and agriculture. This is strengthening our country also in international arena. And nobody has any doubts anymore that this country is viable. 121 countries, members of UN, recognize our country. Independence of Kosovo has been recognized last year by Kenya, Sudan, Syria, and Bahamas. Within EU 27, only 5 do not recognize us. Within NATO 32, only 4 do not recognize us. International recognition and acknowledgement is increasing, and that has to do with our progress at home, but also with our capacity to defend and secure ourselves. We haven't done development and growth at the expense of rule of law, of democracy, or of human rights. We belong to those countries who think that values and interests go hand in hand, and that you don't need to sacrifice dignity of people to have growth of the economy. According to Freedom House, Gallup International, VDEM, Liberal Democracy Institute, then World Justice Projects, and so on and so forth, in terms of fighting corruption, safety to walk at night, then political rights and civil liberties, rule of law, Kosovo is either first or second in Western Balkan 6. So 5 to 7 years ago, we didn't even compare with our neighbors because we're either last or second to last in the ranking. Nowadays, we are either champions or silver medal in Southeast Europe. So I think that both international reputation and internal consolidation have brought us to a new level. And now we look forward to continue this in the next 4 years, since we've gotten a very strong mandate with 51.11% of votes in the last elections, which were held on 28th of December last year.
That was the Prime Minister of Kosovo, Albin Kurti, speaking to our Carlotta Rebelo. You are listening to The Curator on Monocle Radio with me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. We have a highlight now from our show, The Entrepreneurs. Donald Trump's threats about taking control of Greenland have thrust the island into the global spotlight, drawing journalists and tourists alike. In Nuuk, Monocle's Andrew Muller explores what this attention means for local entrepreneurs, speaking with Kasper Frank Moller, CEO and co-founder of adventure travel company Raw Arctic.
Approximately, I would say 3.5 years ago, Isaac, one of the co-founders sitting in there, we got the idea to establish this company called Raw Arctic. And I think for us, it was about merging our hobby with our profession. Me and myself, I have a master's degree in innovation and entrepreneurship and teaches business at the university. And Isaac is an educated Arctic adventure guide. So he knows his way around these, in this nature. So we kind of gathered together and thought, okay, let's do something different. Let's spend our lives on something that we really love. And that's where we brought Rasmus in. Mm-hmm. He's the other co-founder. He's a captain on some of our boats, and he has a lot of experience with business as well. So we were kind of set up for success, let me say it that way. So we ended up launching the company around 1.5 years ago, almost 2 years ago now. And it was, again, with the idea of working with boat operations, working with fly fishing, because that's one of my true passions. I really love fly fishing. It's a bit of a family thing that I do with my siblings. So It started out quite small, and then it scaled into being not only operating here in Nuuk, but doing travel packages and tours all over Greenland. So,
what's different about what Raw Arctic is doing? Where did you see a gap in the market that other tour operators and other tourism businesses in Greenland weren't operating?
I think there is quite a big competition in the market when it comes to tourism, because I think, of course, you have the fisheries is like a really a pillar of the economy. Then you have, of course, rare earth minerals in general, and then you have tourism. And this is kind of the newest establishment of the Greenlandic economy, and that's where we saw an opportunity. But again, there is a really tough competition in the market, but I usually say it's really difficult to buy something that you can't see. So that's exactly what we tried to develop and enhance even further, and that was to sell Greenland. And how do you sell it? It's by being present. It's by taking these interviews, getting us publicly known. It's about being effective on social media. It's about having the proper agents and just being an outspoken person, travel around and using your contacts. And I think that was kind of our go-to market strategy, to really just get it out there. And we ran a campaign in National Geographic last year that said, not for sale, open for exploring. So we kind of used this entire media momentum to our advantage.
Well, I mean, that kind of preempts a question I wanted to ask, which was, have you noticed an uptick in attention over the last year or so, not just from journalists such as ourselves, but from people who all of a sudden are interested in coming to Greenland who may never have thought about going to Greenland before? Again,
when a guy like Donald Trump, one of the most powerful people on earth, starts talking about a country that has barely been mentioned in the world history, it does something, of course. Last year, when the first people really started to arrive, not people, but mainly journalists, Greenland was kind of put on the world map. And that was a huge opportunity for me, especially and for Raw Arctic, because we went out and did exactly what we do right now, talking to journalists. So we really got Raw Arctic out there, and it was a huge upside, because then people wrote to us, hey, I read about you in an article, I saw you on the television, and they were like, I want to come visit your country. And that was just brilliant. It had a huge upside, and it just made us scale way faster, because we were the first contact point. We were not that reliant on external agents.
But did you notice those inquiries actually leading to an uptick in bookings? Did those people who made those inquiries, and I'm not talking about journalists, I'm talking about actual honest-to-goodness tourists, did they all actually turn up?
Yes, they did. Again, Greenland became a new tourist destination. It's trendy. Again, who doesn't want to go to Greenland before it's taken over by the US? That's at least the statement that people are stating. So it's just interest. So again, now there are a lot of people, but my concerns are, though, and that's also one of the things that we see right now, is that, like, again, we're kind of reaching this, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because there's so much media momentum, there's so much being talked about Greenland, and people want to go to Greenland. But because of what we saw in Venezuela, it just kind of puts a bit more power behind the words of Trump. So the concerns right now are a little bit too much. So people, they decide to kind of pause their bookings.
People are waiting to see what happens.
Yes. So people saying, yeah, we maybe have like 20 people on the waiting list, and they're like, yeah, we want to book, but it's a bit too, it's not safe enough right now. So they kind of just want to wait a bit out, wait a few weeks to hope things are going to settle.
Your sense, though, that prospect of the United States actually acting does hang over people on Greenland, is it something that Greenlanders are generally actually quite worried about?
Yes, of course. Again, in the aftermath of what happened in Venezuela, it just seems way more likely that it's going to happen. And of course, when we sit on, like, let's say, critical rare earth minerals, we sit on possible shipping routes opening up with the rapid escalation of climate change. Again, we are a geopolitical position that means a lot, and we definitely feel that. So we understand why Trump wants Greenland. But again, is it going to happen? That's where I have my doubts. Again, wars in between NATO allies, the disturbance of the world order. I have my doubts that it will happen. But our guests are still a bit too hesitant to book, because they're not sure yet, and neither are we. How could we know? Of course, we're all concerned. We're worried about the future, because you're always concerned about something you can't predict.
And and we stay in Greenland now because our team have been talking to people on the ground about their feelings on Trump's threats of invasion. One in particular was David Rogelds, the co-founder of the Greenlandic brand BB Chemnitz, whose Greenland is not for sale t-shirts and hoodies are flying off the shelves. Monocle's Andrew Muller spoke to David Rogelds in the BB Chemnitz shop and began by asking him whether people had an idea of what brand Greenland means.
Not always. It has helped the last few years. Like for many years in Paris, we had to explain and maybe show via maps we are based here. But we always used it as a way of defining our brand and also separating us from other brands, because we are very unique by being from Greenland. Not a lot of brands are from Greenland. We were kind of maybe the first, I would say, since we turned 20. And definitely the first to mix like contemporary, unisex, outdoors together.
I mean, what would you say is notably Greenlandic about the clothes? I mean, I notice on a few of them there's variations on the Greenland flag, which is a bit of a giveaway. But, but other than that,
anoraks is a key piece of us. Like many people don't even know what an anorak is, but anorak is the men's national garment here in Greenland, and every hunter in Greenland uses an anorak. So for like 10 years or so, we have made like a hunting anorak, and from that we just grew this. But yeah, like a lot of things is, of course, like with prints and stuff like that shows we are from Greenland. You can't, like, all of every item doesn't really show it's from Greenland, but when you see like the overall design, we have something unique.
Because this is where we should mention, and I want to mention this because this is something, to my shame, I only discovered recently. Anorak is a Greenlandic word. That is where English got the word from.
So I think it might have happened because of it might be a little bit easier to construct, and so when you only had like the strings was usually intestines from animals, and you had bones as your needles before you had newer equipment. So it's probably more easy to make something that doesn't open up for the wind, where you only have an opening in your neck and you don't have anything opening up in the front. So there is very nice examples at the National Museum here, but also in Copenhagen, of like old Inuit anoraks, how they made them out of. It could be anything from, of course, like furs from different animals, but also they made waterproof anoraks from the intestines of polar bear or seal. Really beautiful.
Impossible to avoid noticing as you approach your shop. You've got the posters in the window saying Greenland is not for sale, at which point we do have to discuss the current situation. How much of that have you reflected in what you're making?
Not really a lot. We came up with the idea for this slogan a year ago, January last year, and worked a little bit on what kind of design we wanted. And we at the end, we just wanted a very clear and simple statement, just the words, kind of inspired a little bit like within Westwood and older, like protest T-shirts, where the message is not diluted in any fancy graphics or anything. So we just made one T-shirt, black and white. And we only made it in two sizes, box fit, because we were showcasing that design march in Iceland in April last year. We did an exhibition. We were invited to do an exhibition, and then this world politics issue came, and then we changed kind of our. The whole installation was called "Greenland is not for sale," and then we added a hoodie. So it's not something we like. Last year we were hoping this would be totally irrelevant, and. I would gladly have had extra boxes laying in the basement we couldn't sell. Then, right now we sell a lot. And
who have you noticed is mostly buying them? Is it mostly locals, or is it a lot of visitors, and especially visiting media?
A lot of visitors. At our web shop, we get from all over. And this summer, where we had a lot of visitors coming from outside tourists, we sold a lot to Americans. But we get. I was just writing to people from the web shop today, and we have. All of Europe, many places in the US, Canada, of course, even some places in Asia. Yeah. So, yeah.
I mean, is that something people here are talking about, this idea that, you know, you do seem to have quite a lot of the world on your side? Is that registering here? Because these are obviously extraordinary times for Greenland, which throughout almost all its history has just been left to its own devices.
Yeah, we are not used to having media at this level, not at all. Last year there was quite a lot, but maybe this time is 3 or 4 times that many. And a few of us can be a little bit overwhelmed at some with the amount of journalists, but in the same way we also appreciate that you guys come here because we need somebody to speak up on our behalf. The worst thing that would in this situation we are in now would be if nobody was here and we were left by ourselves to defend ourselves. I'm not talking about military defend ourselves, but defend our right in this world we're living in. And with media coming from everywhere, it helps.
We're proud to support the craft of journalism. UBS brings you the latest news from around the world. Be part of an international network that brings together leading insights, research and technology across 24 time zones and 12 key financial hubs, with you at the center of it all. UBS. Banking is our craft.
You are listening to The Curator, our weekly highlight show here on Monocle Radio, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Back to Davos now. Carlotta caught up with the Nighttime Foundation, which aims to bring together creators, industry, and government to rethink the 24-hour city. She spoke with Mirek Milan, former night mayor of Amsterdam, and the co-founder of Vibe Lab, and with Georgia McDonnell Adams, who sits on the board of directors of the foundation, to find out more about their work.
The Nighttime Foundation is a global nonprofit that supports the nighttime economy all around the world, and we really want to bring together creative communities, policymakers, but also institutions. We're presenting the Global Nighttime Economy Report, which we've called Enter, because it's a report that brings together more than 300 studies in the nighttime economy from all around the world. And there's not a unified approach when you look at the nighttime economy. And the reason why we felt it's important to be here at Davos is nighttime governance is around now for 15 years. And thank you for all the support that Monocle has given us in sharing this knowledge. It's not something new, but for the people here, it's new. The report that we have just brought out, it shows that 3% of global GDP is connected to the nighttime economy. Some other figures, 3 to 4 trillion in annual impact, but also 1 in 10 people actually work in the nighttime economy, and that's not even the secondary jobs that are connected to it. So it's a very important space to operate in. And we, as in Vibe Lab or the Nighttime Foundation, we are always fighting for grassroots culture, for bottom-up spaces, because really that's what makes cities unique.
How did you begin to even tackle how to split the night for this report?
So after working for the last 10, 15 years in this space, we had the opportunity to travel to so many cities around the world. And you see that the challenges are quite the same, but the opportunities always are different. We always say cities are on the same timeline, but in a different stage of development. And with now more than 100 cities that have appointed a night mayor, club commission or similar position, we have learned that these factors really make sure that people can either work at night, that people can innovate, create culture. And these factors are all part of the nighttime infrastructure. And you need to have all these factors in place, because really often we're still fighting a lot of stigmas. Often people, when they hear nighttime economy or nightlife, they're thinking about, they're drinking and dancing. But it's much more than that. It's also how people get home safely after gig workers or people working in hospitals. How do you get safe at home? And that's, of course, I think, a real driver. The night is a place to develop talent. Think about all your photographers, filmmakers, DJs, VJs. It's really a serious playground for creative professions. And in cities, that's really what drives the local economy.
What we've also found through this report is that it also heroes and ripples down on other parts of the city. So we have a great part of the report here specifically talking about Berlin as a case study. And Berlin's expat community contributes $26 billion a year to the economy, which is an astounding amount just by the expat community. And what we found through the research that we had a look at is that one of the reasons that people choose to live in Berlin is because of its vibrant nightlife scene. So what we're talking about here is not just the moment at nighttime, it's about how it ripple effects onto the rest of the economy, onto the day, and also enhances a city overall. And if we can start changing the language for people to understand that life at night is beyond just the drinking and the dancing, but it actually has an effect on an overall city's vibrancy, then we're in a great place.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned language there, because in recent years, what we've seen that has contributed to that shift is instead of saying, oh, a nighttime economy is a 24-hour city, and then suddenly everyone's on board because then the brain doesn't associate it just with the party side of night.
Exactly. And I think what's important as well to think about is that when it comes to investments with life at night, we definitely need more investment within this space. We've all seen the loneliness epidemic that is happening with our Gen Z generation at the moment. I heard today it's the largest living generation in the world that we have, and they are the most connected, but they are the most lonely. So they need these opportunities to be able to come out and socialise. So we need more diversification in what we offer them at nighttime, because there is less drinking. They are doing other things. So how are we making sure that it's there? And I would say layer on top of that the cost of living crisis for this generation. There really needs to be thought put into what is available for them, how we're looking after them. And also, we all remember our first jobs when we were younger going into that economy. So how are we looking at this from a really broad perspective is really important.
That was our very own Carlota Rebelo at the World Economic Forum in Davos. We'll be right back with more. Another highlight from our shows in Davos was Parag Khanna, a best-selling author, strategy advisor, and the founder and CEO of AlphaGeo. We hear his thoughts on how the town of Davos adapts to the World Economic Forum.
It's operating on two levels. First, this is really the world's original pop-up city, right? And people don't think of it that way. They think of it as this, pilgrimage to the temple of capitalism. But this is a very small, sleepy town. But then for 5 days a year, it probably quintuples in size, and it becomes, in a way, the capital of the world, the capital of capital. All, many, many trillions of dollars represented, 60, 70 heads of state. And again, when you walk up and down the promenade, you see that it is a true mirror of the global diplomatic system. You have an equal number of corporate pavilions, Microsoft, Palantir, Meta, Cognizant, you name it. And of course, the nationalities of those firms. Some are multinationals that you associate with a certain country. Others are stateless companies that really have their tentacles everywhere. And then, of course, the governments. You will have the United Arab Emirates has a fair number of pavilions here represented by the government itself and different sovereign wealth funds. Qataris are here, so you have a strong Gulf presence. We're right here next to the Saudi pavilion, for example. And of course, Europeans, and then the USA House is closest to the Congress Center. So you've got the governments, you've got the corporates, and you have tons of civil society. Goals House doing all of the sustainability work. That is actually what modern or postmodern, you might say, diplomacy is today. It's this multi-stakeholder, which is actually the term that Klaus Schwab himself made famous over the past 50 years when he founded and led the World Economic Forum. So I really think that Davos, the event, is this perfect embodiment of this multi-stakeholder character of global governance today. And then there's the themes where you're, of course, reacting. You have Trump here. You've got, Mark Carney's sizzling speech yesterday, sort of warning that the old world order is broken and so on and so forth. But then you also have these long-term agendas that continue to get driven forward. Sure, people will criticize and say that climate is not getting the same amount of attention as it did in years past, and everything is AI, AI, AI. Again, you're reflecting the tone of the world. So in some ways they're reacting, in other ways they're pushing a certain agenda forward.
Now, looking back at some of the speeches, they all kind of seem to this idea that the world order as we knew it is over. And von der Leyen mentioned how nostalgia is not going to bring it back. That immediately made me think of you, because this is something that you've been saying for a while, the fact that being hung up on nostalgia of how things used to be for nations is perhaps what's holding everyone back.
Exactly. And so I would go one step further, and I've always said, forget about rebuilding the past, because clearly it's fallen apart because not enough people support it. It's what is the next world order that actually has not necessarily consensus, but a pluralistic or strong base of support. And that, as you can clearly see prior to this annual meeting and certainly during it, is everyone connecting with everyone else. So it's Mark Carney arriving here from Beijing, right, where he announced another raft of deals and agreements with them. It is the Europeans engaging with India and the Asians. It's the Arabs making connections with Europeans and Asians and everyone else. So all of that is a sign or reflection of the new patterns of connectivity among greater and lesser powers, either circumventing the United States, which they actually did a lot anyway, but even more so, and then the U.S. realizing that it doesn't want to get cut out of that action, and so they're here as well. And so there is a new equilibrium in sight, one that is more distributed, more multipolar, small and large states, sort of coexisting together, practicing what I call multi-alignment, not choosing only is this a pro-American conversation or an anti-American conversation, but rather everyone is just finding an accommodation with each other and gaining maximum advantage from each relationship. And that's actually a beautiful thing.
You are listening to The Curator, our weekly highlight show here on Monocle Radio. We're heading to Zurich now, where in the latest episode of Monocle on Sunday, our editorial director, Tyler Brulé, spoke with media consultant Mario Garcia about his new book, Consulting with Heart.
When I was writing this book, I came to the conclusion that I have been an interpreter of dreams. When you're a consultant, you sit in conference rooms, and a lot of the people who hired you to be a consultant, half of the room thinks that they don't need a consultant. But I am always told, if you say it, it carries value with the people at the top. So I think I came to the conclusion that I have spent 56 years with 760 organizations interpreting their dreams. And I mean, because I'm 79 years old, sometimes the dream is, how would you see the Wall Street Journal in color? For some of them, it was not a dream, it was a nightmare. Some of these editors consider color to be a cheap quality newspaper, so they would come and beg you, please go easy on the color. We don't want to be a tabloid looking down market paper. So how do you interpret that dream? At the top, they tell you, we are going to put color into the Wall Street Journal by 1999 or whatever. And the people sitting around that table are begging you not to do that, because what is a dream of the CEO might not be the dream of the people who are going to execute it. So at the end of it, I would say I have interpreted dreams, and I still do.
This is going to be a week here in Switzerland, well, globally as well, about coalition building. So it's interesting when I hear about dealing with people on the top. And of course, if you think of being up in Davos, there's going to be a lot of media leaders. Of course, they're going to have a lot of foot soldiers there covering it as well. How much are you in the world of consulting also playing mediator? Because I think I've been in those rooms with you, Mario, where there's people who sit there with crossed arms saying, why is there someone in our midst who thinks they know our brand better? And of course, then the people at the top who are writing you a check for reinvention. How do you bring them together?
Yeah, I think that the key is to listen. And the second key is the consultant cannot be a transactional figure. If you are hired, the reason I call this book Consulting with Heart is because I've learned along the way, and I went back to my diaries. I always keep a diary. And so I had 200 of these moleskins. And I went back to remember each day and what happened each day. And in many of these days, you would go home and say, I quit. This is impossible. I cannot do this, because you have these conflicts that you're talking about. I think that listening is a quality. Listening, passion, and heart are the three things that the manual for consulting skips, or it doesn't give it a lot of play. You have to listen. The number of times that a person at the lowest level in this organization had the best idea. And then I would say, why is it that you are not the art director or the creative director or the editor? And chances are that nobody listened to this person, but the outsider comes in and says, you have the answer here. This person is the one person who could help this organization transform. Right now, the main conflict in most of these media organizations is moving to mobile first. They have the buildings, they have the infrastructure, futuristic buildings, but the mentality in many media houses, I would say 70% of them, they are still concentrating on print, tomorrow's news, as opposed to upgrading the story on the hour, every 15 minutes, whatever. That's the first thing. Suddenly you have another revolution, artificial intelligence.
Where would you deploy your money right now? If you thought, I'm running a newsroom, mobile first, where does that organization need to be? What do they need to be focused on in terms of being, of course, persuasive when it comes to audience, persuasive when it comes to advertisers, and also building audience?
Two important things. First, you need to start creating content in a vertical format. In my class, I do not allow people to bring sheets of paper. If they do, they have to fold it. All your thinking has to be vertical, not horizontal. Tell that to most of the newsrooms. I have just, been to a tour of Asia. And again, it's easier to change the architecture of the room than the mentality of the people. They sit in front of a computer and they are creating the content on a platform in which it will not be consumed. So how do you create? It will be 10 more years before a lot of these editors retire and so on, and there will be a new generation. By 22-year-old students at Columbia grab this, and the content is created vertically. Somebody is going to scroll. Second, sensorial. When I went to journalism school, we learned to construct stories in a certain way. Now, the way you construct a story is a WhatsApp conversation. You write and you show. I just arrived here. Look at the traffic. Picture. You don't do photo galleries. Photo galleries is print mentality. You see in print, you see, and then you read. The opposite is in mobile. So for journalists of a certain age, they have to relearn their craft. That's a revolution that hasn't taken hold fully. And I've worked with your teams on this. Suddenly there is an AI revolution in which you have this assistant that could be a tremendously wonderful assistant next to you, but then you fear it and so on. And so this is where I come in with the scent of the human. I believe that we are going to see more first-person journalism, even in stories where first-person journalism is popular in lifestyle, in food. I was there will become very important. And you're beginning to see it. Sometimes in The Guardian, in the New York Times, you see as you enter Gaza, you could see hunger in the face of the children. That narrative 2 years ago, an editor would have said, too dramatic. But this is the I was there. The robots will never be able to write like that. They don't see, they don't feel. They will begin. In Gaza today, 25,000 children will go hungry because they have data. So I believe very strongly in the scent of the writer. You're going to have to mark your spot and tell me what you saw, what you smell. The human byline is gaining value by the day. If there is a human byline at the beginning of the story, 2 years from now, many stories are going to be written by robots. And it's, commercially, many CEOs are going to be attracted to that idea. But those stories will not have a heart and a soul.
Always valuable insights from Mario Garcia there. We'll be right back with a final item from Greenland. And finally, on this very special edition of The Curator, a tupilak is an Inuit totem, usually a depiction of a small monster, carved from whale tooth, walrus tusk, musk ox bone, or reindeer antler. They come in sizes from key ring upwards. A bigger tupilak might be an entire walrus skull. They were or are believed to ward off enemies and hazards. Earlier, we visited a Nuuk workshop of one of the local sculptors who makes tupilaks, King Kleist Eriksson. King trades under the name Ediaksiak, which means something you don't want to lose. Now, King describes his techniques to us.
First thing, I carve sperm whale teeth and walrus tusks and also walrus craniums. And I'm going to be exhibiting this summer at the National Gallery at Canada in Toronto, I think.
How do you go about acquiring the material, though? Where do the teeth and the tusks come from?
Mainly the hunters, but we don't hunt for sperm whale. It's one of the hardest materials to actually get a hold on due to we don't hunt it. The only way that you will be able to get sperm whale tooth is if you find a stranded or dead whale at the beach and you're brave enough to go over there and take the teeth out. And I have spent my time beside a dead whale and it's not pleasant. And that's why I'm saying if you're brave enough, because once you touch it, even though you wash your hands, it'll stay on for a week.
For the benefit of our many listeners who I suspect have never attempted to extract a tooth from a dead sperm whale, how do you actually go about doing that?
Well, you physically need tools. For example, saw and hatchet mainly, just to break out the jawbone and pick the teeth out. And it's a hard process. I've never actually done it because it's so rare to be able to find a sperm whale that's been dead for days, and you have to be really lucky if it's placed on a really good beach, because we have so rugged country here in Greenland. And but as of lately, I've found some friends throughout the internet that has collected teeth and who still actively collects teeth. For example, a guy in Iceland, he's a really good friend of mine, and recently Iceland was a big whaler country, and they had factories where they take out the blubber and oil and all that stuff, and the teeth was collected for the workers there. And for generations, it has been a family heirlooms of the teeth in a box or something, but the new generation doesn't really have interest for teeth, apparently, and lots of them are for sale on Facebook Marketplace in Iceland, and my friend collects them, and that's where I get it. But yeah, really old teeth. For example, this tooth is probably 120 years old.
That brings us to what you actually do with the teeth, and that one you're grasping there, is that a work in progress?
Yeah, I started on it yesterday because I recently finished a piece a few days ago, last week, I think. Yeah.
And the pieces you make, are these, I guess, modern demonstrations of an old Greenlandic tradition? Is this something people here have always done?
Well, technically, yes. But my art isn't really traditional, but it's more art. Due to traditional art is making dupilex, where you make a figure, scary-looking figure that's supposed to harm your enemies or do something horrible for other people, but I'm not a horrible person, so I don't really have intention, and I'm not really into creating just dupilex. I want to create my vision. I want to do what I've always wanted to do. It's like to be creative and do something people usually don't think about in their mind, and they're like, wow, that's a great point of view, like making polar bear claws, polar bear skulls, and walrus craniums, and untraditional work.
So how would you say your works are different from the traditional idea of the tupilak?
The thing is, whenever I have a material in front of me, I want to work on each side of the material. But in the traditional art form is that you mainly carve from the front side, and the back side doesn't really get that much attention. But what I do is, like, for example, it's hard to describe, but if you look at the picture over there, there's a man, there are two men. So there's a man on each side of the tooth. So,
and I have read, however, that you have recently carved one which may feature the face of a certain US president.
Yeah. That tooth got a lot of attention on my Facebook page, which is called Elriegisap. I just wanted to do one, just out of curiosity, because I made one before with the dupilak holding the head of the priest that came here to colonize Greenland, and it's right here. So it's the dupilak and the priest and his, I don't know what they call them. The priest always has his workers. Yeah. So that's the dupilak and the faces and the traditional priests. I don't know what to call it.
Like a collar.
Yeah, like a big collar.
It would be remiss of us not to mention that you're also a musician. You and your wife do make records together.
Technically, we haven't done a record together. She recorded her own album, and that's where I came in as a musician. But now, on the new recording, we are working together.
Is there a particular song by your wife that you would like us to play this item out on?
Oh, yes. I would like to play Nuuk, the light. It's one of my favorite songs, and she has a beautiful voice, and she's everything to me.
Thank you very much, Kin. And that's all we've got time for this week's edition of The Curator. The show was produced by Jack Dewars and presented by me, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Join us again next week to hear some of the very best of the programs here on Monocle Radio. Thanks for listening.